welcome to the Improv Summit. As always, I'm your host, Spencer. With me today, I have a very special guest. Now, I always say that, so to change it up, because I got in trouble for saying everyone's a special guest, even though I truly mean it, I'm taking the person's first letter, their first name, and switching it into an adjective at the very beginning to kind of, give them something different. So today with me, I want to introduce to you Vivacious Vince. How's it going?
Hello, I'm doing great. I am a little sleep deprived, but I'm super happy to be here.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all?
Hmm.
Anyone in this industry knows we are. I think I'm still catching up on sleep from film school from like 6 years ago. I'm literally still catching up on sleep.
Very relatable. Yeah, those overnights are brutal. And just early
Uh,
mornings.
oh yeah, I had what was it, a 6 a.m. call once. I was a producer for a thesis, as a master's thesis. It was a 6 a.m. call. The night before, I was still doing paperwork at like 2 or 3 in the morning. So I brought a pillow and I just took a nap under one of the desks at the school at like 3 in the morning for half an hour. And I was like, well, I guess I got to get ready to go. And it was like at a national park all day, and it was a lot. And then another time, I had an art director for a project that I was production designing, and it was like midnight or 1 a.m. And I was like, I need these things done. And she just didn't respond. She was like, I'm asleep now. Goodbye. And I was like, so I had to like, I stayed up all night working on this thesis. 6 a.m. comes, like, rolls around. We're like on set. About halfway through the day, I realized I had had no water. I had nothing to eat. I had had nothing. And at one point, they're like, all right, last looks. Spencer, you good? I remember specifically, I was sitting on the bench and I was just asleep. And they were like, last looks, are you good? And I was like, what? Yeah, it's good, fine, whatever. Because that was a beast of a show. But anyway, it was a wonderful movie. It turned out really great, but it was just like, whoo, it was a lot.
And
It's a
that
big
one
scope.
shot, I'm assuming that one shot was perfect then, that
Well,
you
it was
gave last
several
looks on.
shots, but it was perfect. It was great. But it was an industrial kitchen, and we had to like plate food that all had to have specific. It was like Wes Anderson style food, so like there were no. Everything had to be round. Everything had to be specific colors, and it was a lot, a lot. And it was an industrial kitchen that was completely bare when I stepped in the day of to dress it.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was anyway. Enough about me and my time in film school. Let's talk about you, Vince, and your improv experience. What is your background in improv or your improv experience?
Well, not as much as I would have hoped to coming onto this Improv Summit show. But I my extensive improv experience goes back to high school, taking improv, like, I don't know if it was called Improv 101, but just like it's like one of my first semesters in high school, and it just like blew my mind as a really like awkward, I don't really want to put myself out there kid. And this like one, it was like, I think it was a full year of improv that this like teacher just, it like blew my mind, honestly, how fun you can have, like how much fun you can have doing improv and doing these exercises, and also how much you can get to know people that you're with while doing it. And so I I tried out for his improv club, like the second semester that I was in his class, and the teacher did not let me in. So thus ended my improv dreams in high school. And then in college, I like getting more into directing. I took this actors directors class. It's called the Actors Directors Workshop. And basically, these teachers focus a lot on directing through the lens of like looking at actors and how actors like approach scenes and characters. And so a lot of that was focused on using improv to build out these characters and build out these worlds. And so we would do a lot of improv exercises to warm up, and then we would also do them to like basically they would take a scene, and they would be like just focus on the emotions. And so, I would either be acting or directing, and these teachers would tell you like, don't focus on the script, just focus on the feelings and the emotions of the characters. Like, and then your eyes start to wander like down to the script, and they're like, no, 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 don't look at that. Just focus on how you're feeling right now. And that was really cool. And so I've taken that experience and utilize that like every time I direct now. I always want to do, especially when I have like two actors in a scene that have to have a lot of chemistry. What I love to do is like have them do some improv scenes that are like adjacent to the project we're working on.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, if it's a like an office workplace like drama slash love story, what happens when they run into each other at the store? Or there's like one more, bread, like roll of bread at a restaurant they both happen to be at and they both want it. How do they interact with each other? And then besides that, just I took one improv class in college that was pretty fun. Again, I found myself a little bit more socially awkward than I thought I would be. But like as you go through improv classes, as you know, having so much improv experience yourself, the jitters just kind of go away and you become like really attached to the people around you and really attached to just having fun.
I love that. Also, improv is great for socially awkward people because there's a lot that can happen in an improv scene, and you can oftentimes be someone other than yourself. And I think that that's where, for me, I can either play a heightened version of myself or a completely different character entirely. And that for me feels like I can navigate through talking to people. I have a habit of either over talking or under talking, and it's very odd that I can do both very easily. As people know on this show, I can either overtalk or undertalk. It's very true. But I think it's also because I'm a Capricorn and like can't explain what I'm trying to explain to someone, so I have to kind of continuously speak to get it, because I'm like, it's my fault that you don't understand what I'm saying. It's not your fault you don't get it. It's my fault. So how can I get you to understand it? Which actually has helped me as a director and as an actor of discovering different ways to figure out how people gauge and how they learn through direction. And so that's something I kind of want to ask about now, is like when you talked about using improv like to do some scenes that are kind of like within the world but aren't actually part of the script to get your actors to build that chemistry. Are there any other ways that you use improv specifically as a director, or whether it's with actors or like just in terms of camera angles and shot design? Is there any way that you find that you incorporate improv maybe like in the moment on set to create a movie?
Is using improv to like explore blocking of characters. For instance, even if they're like, you can take a scene where someone is talking to someone and they've kind of like cornered them, and like say someone's at their desk and another character is like right in front of them, and it's like a really awkward situation. One character really wants out. A great way to explore that scene further is to like take those two actors out of the scene, put them into a narrow hallway, and be like, your objective is to get out of this hallway. Your objective, the other actor's objective, is to stop them from getting out of the hallway. And so you do that, you do a rehearsal like that, where this person, like all they want is to escape. And, they're like moving through the hallway. One person's kind of stepping like to not let them pass. And then you're like, all right, take all this energy and take how this feels. And then let's go back into the space. And a lot of times you explore, as you do those exercises, you do see like, oh, there's like a way better way to block the scene. And you can even incorporate some of that. Additionally, just like letting actors try a scene, like just be like, all right, on this take, we're going to just keep the camera rolling. And so if you want to just like keep going after the scene, like what's written in the script ends. And a lot of times we end up using that stuff because it feels more natural and it just feels really good.
That's great. I also have learned that a lot of people that are actors don't know that if I don't call cut, you should keep going and do something. Sometimes they'll just like drop and stop. And so sometimes giving them the note of like, hey, don't stop until I say cut is always helpful. But also, a lot of times on set, everything gets really backed up, or sometimes you're behind and you have like 8 shots and you only can do 2. How do you determine how to do that? Or like in the moment, I feel like as a director and even as a DP, if you put the two together, and an AD throwing that in there, you can use improv to still tell the story without getting all these shots. What are some ways that you can go about utilizing the idea of improv to get your day done, but also get the shots you need, even if you can't get all the shots that you have on your list?
Sometimes what I've done is combining shots into like a moving master, I guess. And that means that you have like, hopefully you have some sort of way to stabilize your camera. But basically, if you let these actors do a scene, especially if it's a conflict scene, and you start out with the camera on the wide, and then you just let the DP kind of like improvise with like what to focus on. And you have a good AC, of course, to like pull that focus, but you can go from like wide master to like single shot of this character, then you just like move the camera. And sometimes, especially if they're improvising, you'll get enough material. And as long as like the actors aren't cutting each other off too much and stepping over each other's lines, you're able to like cut between each of these like 3 angles that you've got in one shot in a really cool way. And what's awesome about that is that it's spontaneous and it feels really cool on set when you have this like energy of, I've never seen this before. These actors are making this up as they go. And especially if the DP is doing a really good job, you have like these 3 completely new elements that you did not have in the rehearsal that can ultimately like make a scene even better. I saw a friend of mine actually did that for a short recently that I saw, where it was like a scene of 4 people having like a four-way argument essentially. And I expected it to be like going into the scene, I thought it would be like, shot of 1 or 2 people, cut to shot of another person. But it was just this like moving master shot. It's really cool and really effective tool.
Yeah, that's great. The answer I was looking for was combining shots. No, I'm just kidding. There's a lot of answers, but also combining shots was what my thought was. But I think there's a lot of great information in there because there's something about like, hey, we don't have time. Can we just like shoot it and see what happens? It like obviously has been rehearsed, but maybe the actors aren't like as rehearsed as like every other scene where it's like, okay, you're going to move here, then you're going to do this. And as a director, sometimes it's fun to see actors like sometimes it's like it says I pick up the coffee cup, like just pick it up when it feels natural. Like maybe don't pick up the coffee cup, I don't care. Like I have a tendency, like when I write things, like I'll put like she picks up a coffee cup, he writes on a notepad, and I'm like, I don't care if it happens or not. It's just I was like, if you pick it up on a different line, whatever, just remember when you pick it up. But it's fun, I think, in a way to see how the actors, and of course, I mean, professional actors, how professional actors work on set, how professional crew can just improvise in the moment. And again, seeing how it's improvised, it can also sometimes become the stuff that you use because it doesn't feel rehearsed. And it doesn't feel overperformed. It feels like this is what would have naturally happened had there not been cameras here. And so I think that that's what's so fun about that is, sometimes it's stressful because you're like, okay, we don't have enough time, we got to shoot this whole scene. But sometimes finding ways to tell that story in a different way by capturing everything in like maybe one take in real time and seeing what happens. I know that there have been some projects that I've been in that had that been considered. I may have been in the stuff that I may have been in, my lines may have still been in in it, versus them being like, hey, we're gonna do a 2-shot, the main character is gonna face towards the camera, you're just gonna face away from camera. I'm like, then just have me as a voice. Like, what's the point of this? Like, just have me as a voiceover then at that point. And it became a voiceover. And that whole scene with my lines and dialogue was down to me doing 1/2 of a line in voiceover is what they cut it to. And I was like, cool. This would have been cool footage had it existed. But they ran out of time and they didn't. And it's like, and I get it, like, it's a student film. So as a former student, I get that I just don't know everything yet. But had there been a moment of, hey, there's 2 of you in here, here's the blocking, why don't we just see what we can capture in one master shot? And if they need the close-up on her because she's the main person, like getting that, and then you still get footage of me that you can use. But it became like that whole like scene just kind of was cut other than the line of voiceover, which was fine because there's time lengths for thesis films and projects and everything in school, but which people don't realize, it's not just doing whatever you want. There's requirements for films in a lot of schools. Like ours, it was 15 pages, 15 minutes max was what we had. I ended up shooting a 9-minute movie that went through a bunch of festivals because it was short. Anyways, back to you. Back to you, Vince. I feel like that's something. Anyway, so as a director, I've noticed that on top of like improvising with actors and improvising with directors, improvising with directors, improvising with DPs, director of photography, I've noticed that, sometimes I just want to like I think of something in the moment and I'm like, oh, this isn't reading for me, but I want to try this. How do you go about navigating? How do you go about navigate? I'm just gonna leave it. How do you go about navigating having those ideas and knowing when to like utilize the improvised idea during set, or when to be like, I'm not gonna use it, my editor's not gonna use it, I don't really need to play with the idea because it's not gonna be used. When do you determine whether or not to like throw in those improvised ideas on the fly? If that makes any sense.
Definitely. I have a tendency to always, at least at one time for every project I work on, add in a scene or like a set of dialogue that just is terrible. And I don't realize it, like I think it's great. And then I get to set and you set all the camera up, the lighting up, the actors are in their spot, and then they do the scene and like no one is laughing. So if it's a comedy, like no one in the room is laughing. The actors are just kind of like doing it. And it takes a lot of guts sometimes, especially when you're like in a time crunch, to realize like, hey, this is not working. and to verbalize it and then to like actually take action, especially, when you're trying to make your day, it's really easy to just like film it and then not be happy with it later and complain about it and regret things. And so I make it like a really strong effort to like every time I feel this way on set to like first of all like check in with the actors and just ask like how this is feeling for them. And a lot of times, they want to like please you and they want to be like, oh yeah, it's feeling great. And then if not, they tell me they have issues, that's great. But otherwise I'm like, well, I don't think it like rings true to the characters, or you bring up whatever. And then what I like to do is just take the actors out into the hallway, or like out, out of set, or like clear the set and like let the actors be in the space and like just like talk through what each character would be feeling in the scene, what the actors think. Sometimes that does involve improvising, like just like starting from like keeping the just the first line of the scene and like improvising and like seeing what we can get and like what new lines come up or what new blocking or emotions, just letting them have like run of the space. And then ultimately a lot of times just we all rewrite the scene together and it always feels so much better. I did a puppet musical a couple years ago where we had this scene where the main character and the puppet were like sitting on the couch together watching a movie, and the scene's supposed to start with them like they're like laughing because of something on the screen, and they start talking to each other, and it was just like terrible, and it was supposed to be this like really important scene. I knew we could not reshoot it, and that's what we ended up doing. And like, I mean, the scene's still a little bit cheesy, like they're like cackling as like gunfires, happening on screen, and it's like, are these people insane? But the scene works so much better than it initially was, and I honestly don't even remember how I initially wrote it because it was terrible.
Yeah, and that's the thing where there's pre-production, production, and post-production, also development. But in the idea of pre-production, you have a script. In production, you have a different script, and then by post-production, it's a different script. And that's not the actual phrasing, but that's the one I'm using for the purposes of this show. But it is interesting to see how a lot of times I feel like directors who have a lot more improvisation background, an background, tend to see how the project progresses from start to finish in a better way. They're not as like, this is how I wrote it, and it's got to be this way in post. Like and I mean, most directors are generally pretty flexible on what it is. I have a tendency to be like, if it works better in the edit, let's use it. If it doesn't work better in the edit, don't use it. Like, or like even then, like when I've directed, I'm like, hey, I have this cool idea about this thing, and the editor's like, I'm not gonna ever use that. I'm like, okay, then let's not shoot it. Like, don't waste the time. It's not worth it. But I think with directors who have improv background, they're generally willing to be like, hey, if that line feels weird, just say what feels natural, because I've done that a lot. I'm like, I have a hard time writing like natural dialogue, which is so weird because we talk in natural dialogue all the time. But I tend to write in like my socially awkward, introverted dialogue. I'm like, this is what I think I would say if I talked to somebody. And so it's very hard, but I think it's so wonderful to see directors utilizing improv on set, or having some kind of an improv background to help shape the movie as it goes. Because as a writer director, we're not just like, okay, here's my script, here's my shots. It's a movie. There's a lot, and like you said, I wrote this scene, it was awful, but I had my actors improvise it and it worked out a lot better. Like, that happens. And sometimes it's so funny because sometimes directors don't realize, like, if they're like, this is bad, the actors are like, oh, I'm so glad you said something. Like, thank you for letting us change it. Like, they don't want to say anything because, they don't want to get in trouble for it. But that's just like, anyways, it's a whole long spiel. That being said, random segue that's not relevant. Do you have any plugs or pitches you want to share?
Well, I can't guarantee it, but this Christmas I am attempting to make some sort of like musical comedy short, like 5 minutes. So look out for that. I'm at Vince_Dixon on Instagram, and hopefully I'll be posting about it because I'm trying to get better about actually posting about the things I'm doing. And then besides that, my web series, The Quarantine Crew, is on YouTube at Vendingo Comedy, or I think it's Vendingo with an exclamation point on YouTube.
It'll be linked down in the description too, so you can just click away.
Yes, if you're into absurdist comedy or musical comedy, it's a 7-episode web series made entirely during the pandemic that you can catch there and enjoy it because we put a lot of effort into it. So if you don't watch it, I'll be very sad.
And if you do watch it, who knows what feelings will happen. You could still be very sad because it's still a quarantine. Or not. Anyway, thanks, Vince, for joining me here on the Improv Summit. I have one final question for you, which is the reason why the Improv Summit exists, and I'm excited to hear from like a different perspective the answer to this question, because I generally have a lot of like hardcore actors and like improv teachers on this show. So having a director's perspective, I think, is really cool. But a lot of times before pandemic, and even now with improv being super accessible to anyone from anywhere, people are often coming up to me saying, "Oh, Spencer, you've taken so much improv. Where should I take improv?" And it's always hard for me to answer that because I think there's a lot of factors to it. And so I think from a director's perspective, if someone came up to you and asked where they should take improv, maybe to pursue a career as a director, what would be one piece of advice you'd give to them to help them figure out what they should do as far as improv is concerned?
You always hear, oh, take a UCB class or like take like this or this. I would honestly say the best place to take improv is the easiest place for you to find improv, whether that's a community college or you live right next to the UCB like headquarters or something. Just the first place you can find an improv class that will start as soon as possible. That is the best place, because otherwise, if you're like me, you'll put something off and you won't do it and you'll regret not having done it. And even like we need to realize that we do improvise like every day in life. Even when you're riffing with your friends, like I know I go onto like hypothetical, like, oh man, it's like this, and you just like start riffing. That is improv. And so just embracing it in your everyday life and finding like the easiest avenue for you to pursue it is, I think, the easiest and the best. I know that's not the most specific advice, but just do it is what I would say.
Yeah, it's a fact. The more you do it, the better you get. Anyway, thanks, Vince, for joining me here on the Improv Summit. I did say that was the last question I had for you. That was the final question. But as always on this show, I don't always tell the truth. And I have another question for you. And that question is, we've been talking a lot about improv. You want to do some improv?
I would love to.
All right, let's do it.
Yes, and let's do it.
All right. All right, we're going to do some improv. Wow, usually I have a blue screen, but now I have a white wall. It's always been there. It's just the blue screen was covering it because blue shirt, green shirt, they're not very conducive to blue screen. This is Vince. I'm Spencer. We're going to do some improv. Now, Vince, what I need from you is the answer to this question. Do you want a location, a relationship, or a word?
Location.
Location, great. Let me give you two suggestions. You tell me which one you want to go with.
Okay.
Suggestions are greenhouse or mechanic's garage.
Mechanic's garage.
Great, mechanic's garage. Who would you like to initiate this scene?
Me.
Great. All right. All right. Me. Thank you.
Oh man, this engine, Dom's gonna love this. Oh man. Oh. You ever seen a baby like this, baby?
It's nice.
Nice. Think about it. We get some NOS up in here. We get a bit of a hydraulic lift. Oh, yeah, that's gonna drive.
It's like grease lightning.
Just like Grease Lightning, my favorite Grease Lightning related product / movie. I totally know what you're talking about.
You mean Grease?
Grease. Now there's a movie.
The movie Grease, which has grease lightning. That's the whole point of Grease.
The cars in that movie. Oh, I've seen that movie.
You remember what the color of the main car is?
It's definitely blue.
Oh, yeah, I forgot you're colorblind. It's definitely red, but you got the red-blue color blindness, which is not really a thing. I know that usually it's blue, yellow, or red-green, but in your case, the red-blue, which is fine. That's why you can't see 3D. But other than that, it's a big red, like a big red. I think it's a T-bird, but the point is, it's a red car.
You talk too much. At this mechanic's garage, Dom said we always need to play to our strengths. You talk, I look at engines, and if you can talk about the engines, even better.
I can talk all day. I can sell the car, no problem.
Wow. You really know how to do that talking. I just don't know how you do it. I just drive, I look at the engines, and I make magic with the engines. But you make magic with words, with your mouth. Think about it. Unlimited potential with that mouth.
I have a big mouth.
Yeah.
I have a big mouth.
Yeah, you
I
can
could fit that engine in my mouth.
I would like to see you do that. Can you please do that?
You gotta work for it.
All right. What's it gonna be this time?
Yeah. A couple of bones, a couple of slammies, a couple G's.
Couple G's? I could do $20.
Nah, no deal.
No deal. All right. Dom's not gonna be very happy with this. I'm gonna go cry.
Let's see. Thanks everybody so much for coming to the Improv Summit. As always, I'm your host, Spencer. That's Vince. See you next time. Bye.